Welcome to Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast to inspire you to take your career to the next level. In this podcast, I chat with amazing professionals who are leaders in their field and find out what's made them a success. Many of them have successfully made changes in their careers. They may have changed industry, changed job function, made big city or country moves, or taken the huge leap into entrepreneurship. I also share practical and actionable career tips for those who want to explore what to do next in their career and aren't sure about what steps to take to get moving. Subscribe to this podcast for regular updates or visit me at janejacksoncoach.com.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas introducing Jane Jackson Careers, a podcast that will inspire you to take control of your career and your life. Here's your host, Jane Jackson, career management coach and author of Navigating Career Crossroads. Be prepared to ignite.
Well, hello and welcome back to my Careers podcast. For those of you thinking of entrepreneurship and doing business with suppliers in China, I have a treat for you. My guest today is Carsten Primdal. He's the founder of Vantage Compliance and Mitigation, an offshore supply chain consultancy that specializes in assisting businesses from Europe, USA, Japan, Australia, and elsewhere in risk mitigation and compliance regarding their Chinese supply chain operations. Now, Carsten holds a Master of Science in Economics and International Business from Copenhagen Business School, and in 2002, he was awarded a €120,000 scholarship by the European Union to participate in the 18-month full immersion executive training program in Japan. Wow, that's impressive. And during the last 15 years, he's been working with and in Asia in corporate compliance, supply chain, and risk mitigation professional services. Carsten has developed a really strong perspective and understanding of the challenges faced by companies dealing with and in China and Asia. And since establishing his own business in 2007, he has assisted global brands such as ALDI supermarkets and Lindt chocolate with their supply chain issues in China. And in addition, he has successfully delivered projects in Hong Kong, Japan, India, Bangladesh, Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Spain, and Denmark. He's a busy man, and Carsten's first book, called Red Flag, Your Guide to Risk Management When Buying in China, is currently in the final stage for printing, so I can't wait to get my hands on that book as well. And I'd like to welcome Carsten. How are you today?
Very well, Jane. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's great to have you on the show.
Be on here. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just kick off with finding out a little bit about you, Carsten. So before we go into what Vantage Compliance is all about, let's find out about your career path. So where are you from?
Sure.
Tell me about your early days.
Well, I was born in Denmark, and I grew up the majority part of my early days, teenage years in Denmark, in a little town called Elsinore, which is also the same city where Hamlet takes place.
Oh.
About my sort of early years, my formative years, I don't remember that much actually, apart from sort of running around, being curious, and from time to time getting into trouble for being a bit too adventurous, making hideouts and that kind of stuff in the local forest, playing police and robbers, and I was always the policeman, or in some cases Robin Hood even.
Okay. Sounds like a fun, very happy childhood.
Yeah, it was. No many sorrows. So.
And what about in your teenage years? So once you got a little bit older and you started thinking what you wanted to be when you grew up, what were the dreams in, say, when you were like 17, 18 years old?
Well, my dream changed a little bit when I was 17, 18 years old, because I had a very life-changing experience. I was an exchange student in Australia at that time, which was kind of my first experience overseas. And I usually say that I was sort of bitten by the travel bug when I came here. When I got home, I couldn't stop raving about what happened while I was overseas, and basically I wanted to work internationally after that. So it kind of changed the dreams that I had before, because actually when I was a child, I wanted to be a policeman like my granddad. So yeah. Later on, then I started studying business at the Copenhagen Business School, and I realized that I needed to fulfill certain requirements in order to actually get that international career that I was dreaming about. So, so I got into Copenhagen Business School and followed sort of the path there. I had a fair bit of parental guidance. My dad was a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he thought that I had a knack for details and numbers and all that. So he actually wanted me to specialize in accounting, but I didn't want to have anything of that. So instead I got into international business for my master's degree, and I managed to get exchange semesters in California and in Singapore, which sort of started moving me in that direction.
Yeah, actually, it's amazing. Once you start traveling and you open your eyes to so many different things, and you think, oh, okay, well, what can I do so that I can actually have an international career? So many things can change, and it sounds like you've got a really good, solid grounding with your qualifications in international business and being in so many different countries. So once you graduated, how did your career begin?
Oh, my first job was at a multinational American oil company, and it was in Copenhagen, and basically they were looking for somebody to be the assistant to the managing director and do some numbers modeling. We were developing an offshore production facility in the North Sea, and when I started in that business there was 15 staff members, and within the next 12 months we were 135. So we were growing really fast. It was a $850 million investment, and they put me in charge of the financial modeling. So, I mean, I had to pull in data from all the different departments, the geologists, the geophysicists, the petrochemists, the engineers building it and everything, and put that into a spreadsheet that we had a fairly complicated model, which was good because actually, when I got that job, I thought, my God, how am I going to do this? I'm not good with numbers, despite what my old man told me. I thought I was not good with numbers. So basically they put me in charge of it. And I never received any sort of negative feedback on it. So I think I managed to do all right. And I realized in the process that I probably wasn't that bad with numbers after all.
It was your own self-limiting belief. There's nothing like being thrown in the deep end and actually being able to do something. It must have been a pleasant surprise.
Exactly. No, it was really a very good experience for me that sort of opened up my eyes that I can do pretty much whatever I set my mind to. So, and then basically move forward from there that this company being a US multinational, they had a European headquarters in London, and they always kept talking about whether they should try to find me a placement in London or maybe even New York, but there's some visa issues that made it a bit more difficult. So London was probably the more obvious place. But I had, at that time, I actually didn't fancy London that much. I don't know why, but I wasn't terribly keen on it. And I had a girlfriend from Barcelona at that time in Spain. And that seemed much more attractive to me. So I decided I wanted to live in Barcelona, speaking not a word of Spanish. So basically I quit the job after, we took the project online or on stream. So after we started producing oil, I quit and I moved to Barcelona and started, from scratch in a new city and learning a new language, and it was a fantastic time. Really enjoyed it.
So how did you secure a new role in Barcelona, and what were you doing?
Well, I mean, obviously knowing a language is a big issue in most places around the world, and English is not the first language in most European countries, unfortunately. But basically, I did the hard yards. I started out going to language school for 5 months, and I picked up to a certain level, and then I started applying for jobs. And I guess I was lucky. I mean, the economic situation was good at that time. It was year 2000, 2001, end of 2000. So things were pretty good. So there were a fair few jobs around. And I just managed to see an advert for a company that was doing automotive development. So basically an engineering or type approval company that was growing, and Barcelona has a lot of automotive industry, so they kind of grew out of a local industry, and then they were targeting customers overseas, and they wanted to target Volvo cars and Saab. Back then, Saab still existed, and they wanted a Scandinavian person to be able to travel there and talk to these companies. So they hired me, and I started out at sort of a starting salary again, even though actually I already had some experience, but it didn't really matter because the job was interesting. So then basically the Scandinavian market still was a little bit too small. It was a target market, but it was still a little bit too small. So they also put me in charge of the Asian car manufacturers. So I got to travel quite extensively to Japan, dealing with Toyota and some of the other Japanese car companies, and other places, India, Malaysia, China, basically anywhere where they had some sort of car manufacturing or wanted to set up some sort of car manufacturing. Our services were trying to get our services out there. So that was my job as a salesperson, to build up the relationships and get us in front of these companies so we could actually participate in the tenders.
So this would have been a fabulous way for you to expand your network with all of the manufacturers and the part suppliers in different areas. So yes. I'm seeing how this is laying the foundations for your current role.
Exactly.
So you're working for this company based in Barcelona, traveling all over the world. And so now we fast forward a few more years. And what prompted you to get out of employment with a company that was enabling you to travel the world, which is what your dream was, into starting your own business?
Look, my entire family is working as independents or partners in businesses or whatever. So it's kind of come as part of my upbringing. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to do something for myself. But actually, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly when it happened. My last job was for a Japanese company, and we did quite well. I set up a business in Denmark, and after having spent 2.5 years in Japan, and basically things were going really well. I knew I wanted to do something for myself. I wasn't terribly happy that I had to move back to Denmark, even though that's where my mom and sister and other family and friends were living. So I was looking for opportunities to get back into Asia. And we weren't quite agreeing on how to move forward on that business. I'd set up a business plan, and we had some plans on how the business was supposed to develop, but they sort of jumped ship at that stage. And I thought, okay, well, look, if it's not going the way I really want it to go, then I might as well try to have my own influence on things. And at the same time, I actually had experienced some issues with too much work in front of a laptop. My neck was constantly painful. I had to see the osteopath, and basically told me, look, you're too stationary. You're doing too much work in front of the computer. You need to get out there. So I thought, what can I do? So I decided to become a factory auditor. I've seen lots of factories at that stage already, but I didn't really know what to look for in terms of compliance. And I knew something. I had ideas, but I didn't know the frameworks that I needed to apply. So I took a training, that led me in the direction of, I already decided to set up for myself, but that training actually got me into contact with a guy who had a project in China. And 4 months after the training, he called me and he said, look, we had another guy to do this project. I know that you're doing some things in China, and we're just thinking whether you could do this for us. I said, great, of course. And it was a really good project because we had to employ 6 people from the beginning. So it's really lucky. A lot of businesses struggle to get that foothold in the market, but I kind of got that foothold from the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like just right place, right time. And because of a sore neck. So now this is why you got into entrepreneurship, Carsten. You had a sore neck. Exactly. I needed to get away from the computer. What can I do that will get me out and about? You retrained And while going and, auditing the factories, you were meeting more people, and then all of a sudden an opportunity almost fell into your lap.
Yes.
It's funny
pretty
how
much.
things happen, isn't it?
It is.
Sometimes when all the stars align, and it's like a sequence of events. Once one thing happens and another thing happens, and then all of a sudden, hey, I might have a viable business here.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that I had everything laid out and mapped out from the beginning, but it sort of started moving down a certain path, and I saw that what I could see as an appealing path forward for me. And yeah, it just happened.
And so now is that business then is that the same as this business now, Vantage Compliance, or has it somehow grown and developed and become something a little bit different?
That business in China now. I live in Australia, obviously, and it's a bit more difficult for me to go out and do factory visits these days. And not that I wouldn't do it, but it normally is part of bigger projects if I would do that. But here in Australia, what I try to do is more sort of a due diligence service, because it is my experience that companies don't know that they have a problem with their suppliers until the shit really hits the fan. Excuse my language.
But it hits the fan a lot. That's the problem when you're dealing with suppliers overseas.
It does. That's exactly it. And well, there's many ways, and there's many expensive ways of securing yourself, but taking the right steps from the beginning can be paramount to actually not having to spend that much money later on. So basically, I help companies verify researching their suppliers to make sure that they are who they say they are.
Yeah, and so who would your market be? Do you work with small startup businesses or well-established businesses, or just everyone in between, whoever's thinking of getting supplies from China or other places in the world?
I work with smaller and startups. The bigger companies tend not to be my clients in this business. They were in previous businesses, in my previous setup in China. But the thing is that the bigger companies normally have their own setup in Hong Kong or Shanghai, and for that reason they don't really need this kind of service. So what I'm trying to do, having been part of that world with how the big companies do things, I'm trying to take that experience and share it with the smaller companies. So you could say basically try to professionalize them, because the big companies, they know how to protect themselves in this, and things still happen. Whereas smaller companies don't often put, the priority to it, and that means that they might end up having a huge problem on their hands.
Yeah, I have some friends who've started up their own businesses, and they were going either into India or into China and finding suppliers, and the quality control was the difficult thing. They could find something that was great to start off with, but then over time they would have to keep going back to maintain that quality control. Otherwise, the suppliers would get a little bit complacent, and then the suppliers would, the quality would go down. And I've actually experienced that myself, because I have a sideline business called The Passion for Pearls. So I import freshwater cultured pearls, and a lot of it is finished jewelry. And I like to go to the expos, jewelry expos. And actually, when I started off, it was so much legwork, because I went to China, I was in Shenzhen and in Hong Kong, and I was basically pounding the pavements, knocking on doors, visiting, the manufacturers and the suppliers. And it was so difficult to know who to trust and who was trying to pull the wool over my eyes. And I had a couple of suppliers who, they were great initially, but ended up just very, very disappointing, and what would turn up just wasn't the right quality. And I just realized what I had to do is to go off to some of those jewelry expos and meet lots and lots of them, and then go and visit the factories and see how they actually did it. And then the other thing is, do they work ethically as well?
Yes,
because that's such a big deal, because you don't want to get products from a sweatshop. But I just found it was so much work. It took me about a year just to find some really good suppliers. But I guess if I'd known you then, Carsten, you would have been able to guide me in the right direction.
I could have probably helped you a little bit, yes. I think so. It's obviously it's, well, I shouldn't say a little bit. I can help a fair bit. I mean, I quite often have companies come in and say, look, can you just give us access to your database of suppliers, or can you just pick one from your database? And say, in some cases, I can't really do that because, as you said, somebody else has spent a lot of effort in building up that trust and that base. So just sort of giving it away to somebody else, it either has a price and that price might be that if I do that, I might lose that customer, right? Oh my God, right. You're giving away our details. This is strategic knowledge for most companies. So it is hard work to develop a supplier base that you can trust. And it's not just a question of saying, okay, now I'm there, now I can take a step back and relax. No, it's a constant effort.
Yeah. You've got to always develop that relationship with the suppliers as well.
Absolutely.
So Carsten, tell me exactly, how do you help the small businesses? Take me through a typical day or a typical week if you are assisting a business who has approached you.
Right. Well, essentially, we need to get the details of the supplier that this business wants to verify, right? So we have an online form where people can upload these things, or if they don't have these documents available, we have some templates that they can send out to the suppliers to request the information. I mean, they all have the information, but then it's been translated into English because that's what the supplier think they want. But translation is not 100% accurate and it's difficult to verify. So basically we need the real documents, and then we'll basically start doing our research. And that's online, making phone calls to the factories and verifying, triangulating that the document is actually truthful. And then we'll create a report that says either yes or no. And of course, you don't want to go through the whole process if you're in the selection stage of selecting a new supplier, but you want to have certain indicators. If you have a long list that you found on the web or on Alibaba or whatever, then you have a long list that you can sort of narrow down. And then once you narrowed it down, you do a more comprehensive search. Then once you actually decided who you want to work with, then it's advisable to make a visit as well. So basically we deal with a lot of information, emails coming in, document uploads, and verify things and produce reports out to companies as a sort of an independent third party. And then we help them set up with their suppliers. So if we are to do, say, a factory audit, usually that works in the way that we arrive at the factory in the morning, do an opening meeting, let the factory know what we're there to audit or what we're there to review. And then we do a tour of the factory and make photos and, secure the documentation, the evidence. Then we do document reviews on site at the factory. If, for example, it's a social compliance issue, preventing sweatshop workers, we need to review the salary documentation. But quite often the documents are, they're not entirely truthful. So they have a tendency to keep several different versions of records. So you need to triangulate that as well. And I mean, one way you can triangulate that is to say, look, I mean, the working hours sheet says that you have no overtime and you're not working on the weekends. Okay, let's go and see in your warehouse. Is there any goods in receipts on a Saturday or a Sunday? Because if there's goods in on a day that no worker has recorded working, then obviously there's something going on. So, I mean, you can always find these little things here and there that sort of shows you what's going on, what's the real situation.
Yeah, and that's where any business who doesn't know, they just don't know what they don't know. But the good thing with you is that you know what to look out for and what to check.
Yes.
And because I mean, and you also do you speak Mandarin, Carsten?
I speak a little bit.
Yeah.
Not as much as I would like to, but I have good help.
So you've got a good translator there. Well, it's important to know a little bit anyway, but at least you understand the culture and you know where the pitfalls would be. So I mean, that's just really valuable insights that you're able to provide anyone going into business and looking for good suppliers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and when you say the language thing, I mean, it's some people are more modest, and I'm brought up with it. Unless I'm perfect, I'll say that I don't. And essentially, some people would probably say that they speak Mandarin with my level, but I don't feel confident saying that I speak Mandarin. I can make myself understood and in certain situations, and I've also managed to impress my father-in-law on the odd occasion. My parents-in-law, they don't speak English.
And so your parents-in-law are Chinese?
Yes.
Ah, okay. So that's good. So you've definitely got that China connection there too.
Yes, I do. And basically, I recall once it sounded like it was raining. We were at their place, and it sounded like it was raining. And then my father-in-law has this routine that he goes for a walk after dinner every night and to do some exercise. And he came back up, and I asked him in Mandarin, "Is it raining outside?" And he looked at me like, "Wow, a foreigner can speak." So
my daughter married the right man.
yes, exactly. So I'm trying to improve, but I mean, it's difficult if you're not using it on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I'm sure you'll pick up more as the time goes on, especially when your children start to grow up. And so Carsten, as an entrepreneur and running your own business, what would you say are the main challenges that you experience running your own business?
I think that for the business that I do, it is difficult to get it across that companies need to handle this because they don't know they have a problem until they have the problem. So for some companies, or in many cases, it seems like an unnecessary expense. We'll solve it once it's there, but really that's that is an expensive way to go about it. It's not very expensive to ensure that you have document compliance. So that's a major thing, getting it out there, getting it noticed. So I'd say that's probably the main thing, yeah.
So really marketing your business in such a way that people understand how important the service is that you provide.
Yes.
Yeah, because so many people, I mean, as I said earlier, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And
Exactly.
And for example, for me, I just went into my online jewelry business like a bull in a china shop and thought, I can do this, I'll set it all up. And then, off I went, look for suppliers. I mean, luckily I lucked out and I found 2 really good suppliers. But if all of them were like the bad ones that I found, I would have been so despondent and probably would have given up on the business in the end.
Right.
Do you have a good success story to share of someone who'd had a bad experience before and you were able to turn it around for them?
I do actually, and it's a small trader, and I mean, she's basically just working on herself with her husband, and it's a kind of a slightly different spin to the story. But she'd had her supplier, the supplier had their email hacked. And the hacker had basically, downloaded the whole history of all the communication threads. So they'd been studying everything that had been going on, and even some of the personal details that had been exchanged. So they were able to pass off as being the supplier. And they changed the email address a couple of times, and they ended up saying, okay, your order is ready for shipment. Please pay the remaining 50%. Then they gave a new bank account number.
Oh, no.
And it's not unusual to change bank accounts in China. I mean, you ask for the money where you need it. So nothing strange about it. But what happened was that because it'd been hacked, the money went to an account that wasn't the factory's. And basically they had this relationship for about 9 years, ongoing, no major issues, been a decent working relationship. And, they were using a generic email address, and all of a sudden they'd always communicate with a guy called Frank. And all of a sudden they didn't really realize whether Frank was a real person or not, whether he was complicit in the whole thing, and whether they just sort of thought that it was too difficult to service this as a small client and all that. So basically they lost thousands of dollars on this, and they were pretty much ready to walk away from their supplier. So basically what we did was that we went in and we reestablished communication. We made phone calls. They couldn't speak on the phone because Frank doesn't speak English. He can write and read, but he can't speak. And Meg, on the other side, she doesn't speak any Chinese. So we reestablished the communication, verified that Frank is actually a real person. We verified all the details for the factory. We verified their the bank account details, and we advised saying, look, they're willing to continue working with you, or they would like to continue working with you. They are, in fact, real people behind this. Don't worry. And we got a new email set up with 2-point verification so that it can't be hacked again. And the relationship is back on track, and they just received their container with product. So 6 months late, but because of all this that happened.
Yeah.
So say they had tried to find other suppliers before, but they hadn't really found anybody that fitted their needs. So it was quite important for them to get back on track with this supplier. And we helped them. We helped them do that.
Yeah, thank goodness they were able to turn to you, and you were able to do all that investigation for them and make recommendations as to how to turn it around.
Yeah, just being sort of a set of outside eyes on things that and knowing what to look for.
Yeah. Oh gosh, thank God for Vantage compliance.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, what would your top 3 tips for success as an entrepreneur be?
I think that as an entrepreneur, you need to have the resilience to continue, because things are not great all the time. I mean, overall, for me, since 2007, they've been pretty good, but there has been ups and downs, and you need to be able to push through those. So resilience. I also think that what really matters is getting started. It doesn't help you to sit back and think that everything has to be perfect before going public. Of course, you need to have an idea about what it is you want to do, but all the nitty-gritty details can be worked out later, and it's a big motivator once somebody's actually willing to buy your product to get it done. So being pragmatic and of course it helps to get it out there, build your profile, start blogging, or make sure you have a profile online that sort of corresponds with who you say you are on LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah, and so people can find you. So you need to be resilient. You need to just get started and do it and get stuck in, and don't try and be a perfectionist thinking, okay, I won't launch until actually every little thing is organized, because sometimes otherwise you'd never get started, would you?
Exactly.
And then the third thing is to build your profile, get online, be found, become an expert, or be perceived as an expert in your area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to be found if you're not findable, and it's hard work to go out there knocking on all the doors. So I mean, ideally, in the beginning, probably you need to do that, but over time, you'd want that sort of flow of people coming to you.
Yeah, you've got to be Googleable. So if we were going to Google to find you, what would we put in? Would we put China suppliers advisory, or what would the search terms be?
Factory verification or business verification.
Yeah.
That would be one of them. Look, I have 60 keywords that I'm using.
Okay. Well, let me just tell everybody where they can find you. What's your website?
It's Vantage, like in Vantage Point, vantagecompliance.com. That's my website. And I got it.
And how do people work with you? Do they do you meet with them? Do you have like several weeks or months consulting together, or do you have like one-off meetings, or do you do it remotely? If someone wanted Carsten and Vantage Compliance, what do they need to do?
They need to get in touch with me, and that can be either via email or call me. My phone number is on the website as well.
And what's your email, Carsten?
My email is Carsten, Carsten, at vantagecompliance.com.
Okay. And also, tell me about your book, Red Flag, Your Guide to Risk Management When Buying in China. When is that coming out?
Yeah, it's a long process. It's been 7 months since I handed in the draft to my editor and the layout and all that, but it's finally coming together now. I am, according to my layouter, we will have the artwork ready for print by the end of August. And then I should probably print it in China. Being a China supply chain consultant.
I was actually going to ask you, I was going to say, you really have this printed in Australia or in China? And I would think it makes more sense to have it printed in China. So.
I do too. And there's a huge price difference. The thing is that if I print it in China, it's going to take another 12 weeks before I have a physical copy in my hand. And I really would like to start leveraging on the book. As soon as possible. So I might print a small run here in Australia first, and then order a bigger run overseas, or maybe air freight some copies from overseas, so that I can get my hands on it earlier. And it's been a year and a half since I really started working on it. So it's about time.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really valuable resource, and I love the name Red Flag. You actually had a different name in the early days, didn't you? Wasn't it Shanghai or something?
The original title was Shanghai, yes.
Yeah, but I like this Red Flag because, well, it makes sense because it's China, but then also, just be careful with regard to risk management as well, because you've got to be so careful. Great title, really like it.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so Carsten's business is Vantage Compliance, and you can find Carsten at vantagecompliance.com. You can reach Carsten at carsten@vantagecompliance.com. His book that's coming out is called Red Flag, Your Guide to Risk Management When Buying in China. And I will also have all of this information on my website at janejacksoncoach.com with the show notes, so that if you want to just click straight through and get to Carsten's business, you'll be able to. So Carsten, do you have any final words for me? It's been so good talking to you.
I'll be happy to give away some free copies of my book as well. But I mean, obviously, if there's a notes section on your website, people can figure out where to go and register for that, then there's let's say 5 copies of my book to the first people who register.
Fantastic. Okay, 5 copies of Carsten's book will be available for the first 5 people who email me at jane@janejacksoncoach.com. That will also be in the show notes, so look out for it in my podcast section on my website. So lovely. It's such a pleasure talking with you, Carsten. I've learned a lot. It's really good hearing about your early days as well. And I think that you should brush up on your Mandarin.
Yes.
So I must say, share to you, because I'm half Chinese myself. I speak Cantonese, though, so it's Mungoi Sai in Cantonese.
Right.
My Mandarin, I find Mandarin's very difficult to learn. Yeah, that's right. But share is the Mandarin, right? Yeah. So thank you so much, Carsten. And I look forward to speaking with you again with some more stories of the people that you've helped, in a few months' time. And also when your book comes out, let's have another chat and we'll talk all about the book.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Lovely.
Thanks a lot, Jane.
Thank you, Carsten. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Jane Jackson Careers. Sign up to receive regular career advice at janejacksoncoach.com.